Hey, much love, everyone. Episode 138. I had to for sure bring Jason Bashir's on for this episode. Really appreciate Jason for he opened a lot of doors for me. It wouldn't if it wasn't for Jason, I wouldn't be on doing a lot of what I do today. He received an email from me and I asked if I could come on his channel and talk, and he that was a really small channel and he said yes. And I've met so many people because of you, Jason. So thank you, brother. How are you doing today?
That's what it's all about.
Sweet.
It's what it's all about, networking.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. You have an amazing community. It was so good to be with you guys in Texas last time, and can't wait to do a camp out or whatever comes up down the road. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
so
a,
not everyone knows about the number 138, but the reason I wanted to have Jason on this episode is it's a really significant discovery that he made, and it's not a commonly talked about thing, is the idea that we're in a construct that has a linear time construct to it. And I'd love for Jason, if you don't mind, giving us a how did you come across this information? How has it changed you? What are your theories for those that don't know kind of what you're all about? And just give us the rest of us a reminder.
wow, we're going old school.
Yes, sir.
I haven't really talked about Phoenix to anybody in a long time.
Cool.
Uh, I do some new Phoenix videos from time to time when I've got new information or a better way of looking at older information, but I haven't gone old school and just went back to the basics. It's been a long time. 138th episode. That's pretty badass. That's pretty badass, man. I like that. So really, to reduce it to its lowest common denominators, after about two decades of historical research, I found out that the heartbeat of history is a 138-year cycle, and it's just long enough that every single time these events occur again, there's no one left in the world who would have ever had memory of the unusual phenomena that would have happened the last time that it occurred. And it's not an arbitrary number. It's not one that I just made up. It's one that's been found in history, in chronometry. Chronometry is the study of metrics as they apply to ancient megalithic structures, showing that many of these anomalous sites, Silbury Hill, Stonehenge, of course the Great Pyramid's the biggest one of all. 0 degree, it's the 0 degree longitude meridian for the ancient world. Their actual rectilinear measurements are recording chronological facts about basically timelines. And this is really unbelievable to, wait a minute, hold on. Something's wrong here. What happened to all the books? Where's all the books behind?
I'm in an Airbnb in LA right now.
Okay, all right. All right. So I'm like, I just noticed this is an empty bookshelf. This ain't like you, Joel. What's going on? So anyway, uh my passion was history and cyclical history, and I'm a catastrophist because that's what the historical model shows. That's what all the sciences, all our naturalists, before they were called scientists, they were called naturalists. And this is what all the way back from Pliny, all the way further back, 700 years to the Ionian naturalists like Thales of Miletus. All the Ionians were the scientists of the Greeks. Um, and they all believe that this is cycles of history. Even Plato addressed the cycles of history through the lens of Solon and what the Egyptians told him. Even the Egyptians even censured Solon and told him, "Hey man, you Greeks are so young. You talk about one flood, but there's been many floods." And this is one of my controversies with the whole Graham Hancock crowd as well, is because why do you focus on the Younger Dryas and then claim it's the Great Flood when there's nothing in the historical record that would link the Great Flood of great flood fame with that period of time? But there are so many ancient traditions and texts that link it to the 23rd century BC. And then we have the Atlantean narrative. I've been talking about that a lot. It's 13th century, late Bronze Age collapse. And the Egyptians were right when they told Solon that. In ARCHAIX, we have documented the 3895 BC Adam and Eve destruction. It was a destructive Genesis reset. It was a whole civilization collapsed. And humans were so in shock. It had happened so fast and it left so few survivors that humanity noticed that, okay, because of a pole shift, because of all lithospheric displacement, subsidence, volcanic resurfacing, humans in a very short period of time, the survivors found themselves naked, which is symbolic for a lack of infrastructure. They don't have anything left. So no way to make clothes, no anything. The survivors are living hand to mouth as hunter-gatherers. Yeah, the uniformitarian model has us believe that hunter-gatherers, we evolved from primate hominids that turned into Neanderthal, and then one branch became Cro-Magnon, and then Magnolanian Cro-Magnon, then eventually human. And this is not true. There's no links between any of these. These are all very very independent groups. Even their anatomy is so very different.
Yeah.
But these uniformitarian principles have completely contorted our view of history. But with the Phoenix research, we now see that there are great cataclysmic episodes of 552 years. And this was my first discovery. I had discovered the 552-year period before I ever discovered the 138, because 138 is actually an epicycle. It is four periods of 138 years each that make this mega cycle of 552 years, which is terrible and cataclysmic. So the Egyptians were correct. There were many floods. The first one was 3895 BC in the historical record. We call it the Adam and Eve event. It started the pre-flood world. So it was a great flood that started a pre-flood timeline to the next great flood. But but really, there was another flood in there too that's not very commonly known. It killed 1/3 of the human race. And this was the Gihon flood, which is also world famous. And this was the appearance of the Anuna, the appearance of Enki, Enoch. This is 3439 BC, and it's toward the middle of the pre-flood antediluvian period. So that was the second flood. The third flood being the Typhon flood of Noah, 2239 BC. This is the famous biblical flood. It's also the exact date the Chinese provide for their flood of the Dragon Kings. So we have here's three floods right here that verify what the Egyptians told Solon, that you Greeks are young. You remember one flood only, which is the flood of Deucalion. But there's been many floods before that where you had to start over. They were right, because those three floods aren't even the only ones before the flood of Atlantis, which was what they were talking about. The worst by far of all of them is the Ogygian deluge in 1687 BC, which literally sent the world back to the Neolithic. And it totally collapsed all these. This is where the megalithomania comes in. This is why you can go on Facebook and on Twitter and Telegram and Reddit and YouTube, and you see all these people talking about megalithic structures and all these mystery structures, and they don't realize that whole world ended in one single day in the month of May when the Phoenix appeared. It's the Ogygian. It's the worst. It was worse than Noah's flood. It was worse than the Gihon flood. I'm not saying it was worse than the Adam and Eve reset, though, but it was bad. So here we have four historically documented floods that almost everybody ignores. I'm talking about all the copyists of Graham Hancock, like Jimmy Corsetti and even Robert Bauval, Robert Schoch. They all ignore all these very well historically documented human and civilization ending events to jump all the way to the Ice Age, which the Phoenix data does not promote. We don't have any Phoenix data going back that far. The Phoenix chronology of 138-year episodes only covers the known historical record. We can only go back 58 centuries on these 138-year deals, but there's so many of them. And we have and it's always in orders of magnitude. Phoenix is like a weapon in the sky that's hidden. And it's not, I used to believe when I first started doing this research that we're talking about, because I believed in the Newtonian version of our solar system. And I initially believed that we're dealing with an intruder planet. But the more I research the phenomenon, there's no way anything with perfect regularity over 58 centuries can always appear in the exact middle of the month of May every 138 years. There are no other astronomical bodies that can do this. So how can this one? We're dealing with something else. I mean, remember the theory was even put together, Joel, long before I became a simulationist. I didn't become a simulationist until I started my YouTube channel. But
Hmm.
all my Phoenix research, 3 published books were done prior to me even being on YouTube. And back then I was still believing in the solar system model. I don't hold to that model anymore. I don't even believe the sky is real. I believe it's holographic. And this is by virtue of my research. I cannot shelve anomalies. A lot of people have the ability to come into contact with all kinds of anomalous data, and they can still maintain their belief structure by shelving that data and not entertaining it. I can't do that. Everything must fit.
Yeah.
If I'm reading Charles Fort and he's got 500 years of scientific data that goes back, all the scientific reports, the eyewitness accounts, all the newspaper clippings going back 500 years, he goes through all this material and he asserts in his books as factual that we have had rains of animals from the sky, that we have had the same species of fish rain across Pittsburgh. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Almost starting a plague from rotting fish. And and then you have your uniformitarian explanations. Oh, well, it's simple. It was a typhoon that sucked up part of a lake. Okay, well, that's good. But we also have rains of saltwater fish. Oh, it was a saltwater typhoon that went over that time and said, oh, okay, that sounds really simple. So can you explain to me why the typhoon would be so discriminating? How come there's no seahorses, no plankton? How come there's no seashells? How come there's no other types of fish? Why is it always the same species of
Hmm.
of tadpole, of frog, of toad, of turtles encased in solid ice that rain from the sky? Why is it always the same species? Because if your uniformitarian explanation is true, then a typhoon would have sucked up everything in the pond. Why didn't other life forms fall? Why is it all the same species of fish? And why does it look like they were all born right at the exact same time? This is an anomaly because insects, pupas, cocoons, all these things have reigned all over the world. There are places in our world that are covered with ice, and the ice has been there for centuries. And in those layers of ice are layers of insects. What were insects doing raining down at the North Pole? Raining from the sky. So Charles Fort has documented many things, so has William Corliss, and they're only citing all the older reports of all these unusual life forms that keep dropping from our sky. Even there's so many things that don't seem to be native to our world, and they just fall from the sky, like all the carnivorous plants, the Venus flytraps. These are very unusual life forms. Also, jellyfish. We still cannot identify the structuring of the DNA of the jellyfish. The jellyfish is so alien to anything else genetically in our world. So I have to bring all these things to the table in my belief structure. And there's no way I can hold that I'm looking up at a real sky and that bright star is a planet just like ours, and we call it Venus. I can know To me it's a luminary. All it's going to be is a luminary. And we have 500 years of scientific reports of people going out to investigate fallen stars.
Hmm.
You know what they find on the ground when they get to those places? They don't find what uniformitarians tell us, which is a big giant crater. The movie Superman shows a rock hitting and it digs a furrow. And this is not what we find when supposed meteorites hit the ground. We find something else. Do you know what that is?
Well, it's not going at an angle. They're always perfectly parallel
They're
to.
they're perfect bowls, but then we're told that those meteor craters are from rocks from space. But those who actually are in the research that follow the shooting stars and take pictures of them and they see them on camera and they follow the trajectory, when they go to those geographical areas, what do they find? They find star jelly.
Wow.
They find a very foul smelling ochre that's clear, that as soon as the sun comes up, it burns away and there's almost no evidence of it. But at nighttime, it's thick and it's gelatinous and it's all over the plants and it's all over. And this stuff was burning as it was coming in. So this is what's been found. This is what's been recorded. And there's a lot of older reports about star jelly. So we have to take these things into consideration. over and over and over and over, things have fallen from the sky that pretty much shows us that what we're seeing is a light show. But what's really happening is that there's something that creates life. And it creates life like maybe in huge repositories, because every time it dumps life, locusts, when it dumps rivers of insects, they seem to have all been born at the exact same time. They're at the exact same state of development. And sometimes those dumps from the sky are premature. It's just all pupas, or it's just all cocoons, or it's just all an insect in a very pre flight pre-winged embryonic state. Or sometimes they've been held too long and the insects are very old and aged, and most of them just fall to the ground dead. So we don't live in the world people think we live in at all. We live in a world that is manufacturing life in the sky somewhere and dropping it into our world. Now, once I began assessing this data and taking it all into consideration, the Phoenix material began to make more sense, because the Phoenix material is very unusual in that it's not depositing life forms. It's depositing very rich iron oxide dense red soil.
Mm.
This is what the Phoenix phenomenon does. Sometimes it's tons per square mile of this red dirt, so red mud and red. It's falling all over the world, and it's very well documented. So the but it's even more than that. It's even more than that. I am convinced by virtue of my research, which used to be just cataclysmic in nature, that something else is happening. During these 138-year Phoenix episodes, there seems to be an exchange of materials. It seems to be several things happening. One is new soil materials are being dumped on our world. At the same time, humans are coming up missing. Cataclysms, tsunamis, a lot of volcanic activity, all kinds of things are going on in the world as a very nice cover for the disappearance of people. You see, if nothing unusual happens in, like, let's say Houston, Texas, if nothing unusual happens, we have like 4 million people there. All with all 26 little satellite towns and cities that are attached to Houston, there's like 6 million people in that metropolis. So if if no earthquakes, no tsunamis, no hurricanes, nothing unusual had happened, the police have a pretty good grasp of how many people come up missing every year. They just know. They've got all kinds of formulas. Well, we know there's this many homicides. We know that there's this many undetected homicides. We know that this many people leave the area, and whatever. But once they have gone through their whole list of things that they can exclude, there's still a bunch of people who are unaccounted for. They have just vanished. Well, these vanishings seem to happen during these Phoenix events, and and it's not during times of peace, because on these Phoenix events, it's always some major earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic activity, some type of astronomical phenomenon, just something, just an excuse that's just good enough for people not to look for everybody who came up missing, because they have an excuse now. So, oh, they're probably under all that rubble, or they're probably under the. So, but this is a common denominator. One of the reasons this theory was developed this way is because we have so much organic material by which scientists can take samples and do carbon-14 readings from all these ancient cities, and the common denominator is all these buried cities were buried in cataclysms,
Mm.
because any continuously developed city is not forgotten. They just keep building on top of it. But we have abandoned, buried cities all over the world. Archaeologists are excavating, and the common denominator is an earthquake felled this community very fast. Stone walls fell in, imploded, pancaked, but there are no human skeletons. So this is a common denominator in archaeology. Where are all the skeletons? We have all these ancient sites that fell from earthquake activity and were gone. And we have many historical accounts. from Pliny all the way to Ammianus Marcellinus, we have at least 100 accounts. This is only a 500-year period, but we have at least 100 accounts in the historical record of major earthquakes, many of them happening at night, filling whole entire cities, whole entire areas. Even at one time, like in around 31 BC, all of Bithynia, all the cities of Bithynia. That's why most people have never even heard of the Bithynians. It was a nation right next to real close to Macedonia, but right next to Pontus, where you're familiar with the Poison King, King Mithridates, who went to war with Rome. It's his neighboring empire, our kingdom was called Bithynia. But I mean, there's a lot of ancient nations people have never heard from because they vanished, like the Dacians. It's always been a mystery. The Dacians were like Roman provincial. The Romans had fought them many times, then they became a Roman province, and all of a sudden they're gone. And it's always been a mystery how a huge, massive body of people could just come up missing. But 284 AD is a Phoenix year, and that's about the time they came up. They vanished. So also the I think it's CHAMO. I'm not or CHEMO, not chemo. I can't remember, but they're like the Mosh, Moshe, the Mosh culture. There were two major cultures in the northern part of South America that just vanished. And it was a Phoenix year. It was a Phoenix year. We have so many of these examples. But where it all started for me was basically the biblical chronology. It didn't make sense to me why it would be so broken, and yet biblical chronology is very specific. 1,656 years is a very specific number. You can't ignore specifics. The ancients were not used to giving us numbers that highly specific. So it begs the question, why would you give me a number? Why wouldn't you say 1,700 years? Or why wouldn't you say over 1,600 years? Or why wouldn't you just say 1,650 years, 1,650 years? The ancients are known for giving us very round numbers. When it comes to the biblical material, the pre-flood world was 1,656 years. And then 1,000 years ago, we have the commentaries of Rashi. And in Rashi's commentaries, he specifically said the world is flooded every 1,656 years. I can't ignore that. So I'm reading Nostradamus and I find out that he believed that there was exactly 1,242 years between Adam and Noah. Why would you be so specific? The 42 is what gets me. I can get 1,240 years, but you threw a two in there. That's very, very specific. So these are the things that jumped out on me, and I'm writing them down. I'm keeping a list as I'm doing all my historical research over a 2 decade period. And I find other references, like in Hans Bellamy, where he's talking about that there was an intracalendrical system that was embedded within the Mayan long count because the Maya were observing multiple systems at once with their Bacton count and their ton count, and they used a year of 360 days for all calendrical calculations. It's called the ton, T-U-N or tune. Might be like tuna, I'm not sure. But Hans Bellamy, in publishing this material, he says it's unusual though, because you can use the Bacton system to see another Mayan system that they were very, very careful to observe, which was a 2000, he called it a heptad system of 2,760 years. Again, that's real specific. Why not 27 centuries? Why not over 27 centuries? Why not almost 28 centuries? It's very specific to say 2,760 years. And I had to pay attention to that. Why? Because the Mayan calendar is ultra specific. It's 1,872,000 days divided by 13 Bactans of 144,000 days each. The Maya knew what they were doing, but it's also one of the most enigmatic calendars in the world because it started at a certain date and time, 3113 BC, and it was not a calendar of events that led up to that event. It is a calendar that went straight into the future to a far, far, far future date when they said what they said was going to be the collapse of time and the collapse of time and the collapse of the 13 heavens when the 13 hells will be opened. So I'm paying attention to these numbers. So I find out that as I'm reading Archbishop James Usher, I'm looking at his material, and I know he made some chronological errors. And this is why Bibles for 400 years all said that year one of the Bible was 4004 BC. It is because of the mistakes by Archbishop James Usher. He was wrong. Year one for the Genesis account is actually 3895 BC. It was a Phoenix year. And it's exactly 1656 years to the great flood of Noah. But that's neither here nor there. In Archbishop James Usher's material, he got the BC/AD dates wrong, but he got the Anno Mundi dates absolutely correct. So it shocked me to find when I was going through his material that the sky turned red, earthquakes, something appeared in the sky, the human race was depopulated in the year 2208, Anno Mundi. He nailed it. It was exact. That is the exact year of the Ogygian deluge, which is in our calendar 1687 BC. So he got many other dates right, like the Exodus. I've shown multiple times that in the old world's calendar, the Exodus of the Israelites from Egypt was 2448 Anno Mundi. That's exactly what Archbishop has in there too. But Archbishop has something a little different, which confirms the Colburn Bible, but not the Bible we're familiar with. In Archbishop's reference for 2448 AM, it is the year, or we know it's the year 1447 BC. It's the Exodus. It's the Exodus event. But in Archbishop's version, he doesn't mention Israelites coming out of Egypt. He said it was the exodus of Cecrops and his people who left in that exact year that the Bible has as the exodus of the Israelites. And in Archbishop's, it says Cecrops and his people fled Egypt by ship. And these are the founders of the Greek civilization. So we have the exact same year, exact same chronology, but Usher seems to be telling us a pre-Jewish version of what happened at that time. Very interesting, but it's the date 2208 because the number 1656, the number 2208 that I just cited, the number 1242 of Nostradamus from Adam to Noah, every one of these numbers is divisible by 138. The number 2760 of Hans Bellamy for the heptad system of the Mayan long count is divisible by 138. But they're not the only ones. We also have an Inca tradition where they believe that their children of the Sun dynasties began 2070 years before the Spanish went and talked to the Incas. Well, again, this is in the writings of Montesinos, who was like half Inca and half Spanish chronicler. This is really compelling because it's not 2000. And you didn't say 21 centuries either. You were very specific. 2070 years is divisible by 138. You just can't make this stuff up. So I got a list of all these, and there's more than that. There's, a matter of fact, I have a video on YouTube called the ARCHAIX Challenge, where I'm challenging people. If you think history's fake, and if you think all this stuff is real, well, you have your homework out, set out for you because these numbers are very compelling and they come from different periods of history, different ancient texts from different continents by writers who spoke and wrote in different languages. They've been found, this series of numbers have been found all over the world. So if you think history is fake, you need to figure out why all these people link this number to cycles of destruction, depopulations, something appearing in the sky that turns the moon red and blackens the sun out while there's earthquakes happening on the earth. So this number is linked to this phenomenon. And like I said, there's many more. So as I'm putting all this together, I'm realizing, wow, there's one cycle that's so famous in the ancient world. It's called the Phoenix cycle. And I'm doing a bunch of research into that. And part of the Phoenix cycle is about something crashing into the sun and making it go out. But then the sun comes back and it's like it's reborn. So they identified it as a great celestial bird that flew into the sun. So this is the same thing. It's causing these weird eclipses that have nothing to do with the moon. So the moon's somewhere else in the sky and it turns blood red and almost disappears each time this happens. So as I'm linking this together, I said, wow, Phoenix cycle, and we have different. By the time anybody was writing records about the Phoenix cycle, it had already almost been forgotten. So we have different writers that say that the Phoenix cycle was 550 years. Some say it was 540 years. Others round it off to 500 years. But it was believed, those are the three numbers you that have passed down to us in history. The Phoenix cycle was either a 550-year period, it was either a 540-year period, or it's just 500 years. Well, obviously, the 550-year period, being the most obscure of the three, is the correct one. The reason we know it's correct is because you can take 1656, the pre-flood world, and divide it by three, and you have three perfect cycles of 552 years. So when I figured that out, I was like, wow, that's 1656 years of the pre-flood a world right here, with the flood being in the middle. Then I found out you can take 1656 years after that perfectly, you get 583 BC, the month of May. When I started researching that, I couldn't believe it. Thales of Miletus, an Ionian of remote descent, the Ionian naturalist, the scientist of the ancient Greeks. Exactly 1656 years later, the sun darkened and it astonished the Greeks, and it was predicted 2 years earlier based off historical and astronomical material that was in the possession of Thales of Miletus. He became one of the seven wise men of Greece because that prediction came true. And by this time, according to Herodotus and Pliny, the science of eclipses was already known. It wasn't even a mystery anymore. It was just an unusual phenomenon. And when the moon eclipsed the sun, to the Persians, this was good. It was a sign to them that, oh yeah, we're going to win. We're going to win this war. Because to them, the moon, the lunar reckoning system, was their symbol. And for the moon to darken the sun, it means the moon was stronger than the sun. But to the Greeks, they were well, they venerated the sun. So for the sun to go out by the moon, their interpretation of the phenomenon was the same as the Persians. Oh, this is an ill omen for us. So, but that's not what happened in 583 BC. That's what happened in the writings of Herodotus and the writings of Pliny and Thucydides when they were describing the Persian invasions of Greece. In the Persian invasions of Greece, these eclipses were interpreted in this fashion. But in 583 BC, it was the Medes and the Lydians, two lunar cultures fighting each other. And when this happened, Herodotus is very careful to omit any references to the moon. Whatever darkened the sun, it didn't have anything to do with the moon. And it was exactly 1656 years after the Great Flood, which was 1656 years after the Adam and Eve Genesis reset, worldwide, whatever it was, pole shift flooding and all that. So the 1656 years it became very compelling, and I started finding it more and more in different areas, and it can be broke down again into a 414-year period. So I'm now researching the world in 552-year segments and 414 because 1656 years is 414 times 4, and I didn't discover this number. I had read a book called The Secrets of Time by Dr. Stephen Jones, a biblical chronologist. He didn't know anything about the 138-year Phoenix timeline. He didn't know anything about the Phoenix cycle of 552 years, but he was convinced that the history of the world was full of 414-year cycles and that nothing ever good happened. It was always something terrible. So he called it the cursed Earth system, and he didn't know anything about the Phoenix. Well, 414 is 138 times 3. So all these discoveries were made first. And then I came across Tracy Twyman's research, and in one of her footnotes, she quoted an ancient Jewish commentary, and in that commentary it said that God had banished from heaven the two angels that visited Lot at Sodom and Gomorrah for revealing to Lot and the Sodomites that God was going to destroy those cities. And God banished those two angels for revealing the destruction for a period of 138 years. That puzzled me. It's like, what? I don't get it. Why not 140 years? 12 times 12, the completion of a cycle, conceptually would be 144 years. You know what I mean? And if you wanted to mirror how old Jacob was, you know, uh, um, when he wrestled with an angel, I said, why not say 130 years, which would have been the 13 tribes of Israel times 10. There's different ways the biblical writers had conveyed numbers, and it's always self-referencing, but this was unusual. Why 138 years? So it still didn't open my mind up that it's all the same system. I'm still not seeing it yet. It took me reading a 1926 hardback book, a work of genius by engineer David Davidson and H. Alder Smith. And they wrote a book called The Great Pyramid, Its Divine Message. And in the book's appendixes are packed full of cylindrical information. As I'm going through it, I find out about an ancient Egyptian festival that was a lunar festival, and it was only honored at nighttime. And people came together and they put candles on boats. And I'm remembering, well, this is a flood tradition from China. So this is what they did in ancient Egypt. They went to the Nile River in the month of May, and they got these little boats, and they put an offering. Sometimes it was a candle, sometimes a little piece of food, whatever. They put an offering on it, and they let the Nile take the little boats out. And they did this every 100, excuse me, they did this every 1,656 days. It was a festival. They counted the days, 1,656 days, and then they would do the festival again. So it wasn't every year. It wasn't even every year. It was more like every 4 years that they would do this little ceremony. I found it really, really interesting because David Davison also said that the Egyptian civilization was lunar uh, based society. They didn't trust the moon, and that they counted in moons. So I'm like, wow, this is just really weird. And it come to find out that in the Egyptian concept, 1,656 uh, uh, divided by 12, which is the Egyptian lunar count, is 138. And it blew my mind. So wait a minute, there's a number 138 again. So 1656 divided by the Egyptian lunar calendar is 138. This is when it all fell. This is when I went through the whole history of the world. I pulled out all my chronological data, all my notes, and I'm like, wait a minute, okay. So if 3895 BC started a 1656 year period to the Great Flood, and this is what Genesis adds up to 1,656 years from Adam to Noah, the flood. So if this is true, and Rashi's right, and Hans Bellamy's right, and David Davidson's right, and Archbishop James Usher's right, and forgot the other ones. Montesinos is right. If all these ancient cultures had these numbers, and every single one of them were divisible by 552 and 414, then the only thing I'm missing is what the common denominator is. So I started at 3895 BC and I counted 138 years over and over, and it shocked me. It shocked me all the major events in world history that happened at these times. So we have this massive 552-year cycle of these super destructions. But then by orders of magnitude, if this is a 552-year destruction, then 138 years later, the Phoenix year, but it's major events in world history, but not depopulations, earthquakes, none of that. Then 138 years later, we start having that activity. It's like it's building in magnitude. Then 138 years later, it's 414 years after the big one. So by orders of magnitude, we have hemispheric fallout, not worldwide. And then 138 years later, we're back to this number, 552, and it's epic. It's world destroying. To give you an example, we are now within 15 years, right now, under 15 years away from the third magnitude visitation of Phoenix, which is the 414 one, which is the hemispheric one, not the real bad one. The real bad one is in 2178. That's going to be the 552-year Phoenix cycle. So I hope I haven't overwhelmed you because it's literally now three published books, and over 100 videos and so much research that I can't abbreviate all that into one single video. It's impossible. I just gave you a very, very skeletal overview.
Oh man, that's amazing. Every time I hear it, I learn something a little more, and I appreciate how you can explain it differently each time, because you really have embodied this understanding or spent so much time saturated in it. It's powerful, brother. It makes so much sense. I sense the intensity of that. Like, how does that work? Where did this come from? Who created it? What created it? What are we because of it? There's so many questions that just it totally changes your perception of what's possible. And um, I was one of the things that tripped me out at one point was I was on psilocybin in the forest in Orcas Island, Washington, and somebody in my group pointed to the sky, and all of us look up, and there's thousands of little oval lights
Mhm.
all crossing the sky super fast, all moving at the same speed. It didn't look like the thousands of orbs didn't necessarily make a particular shape. They just looked like they were free falling in a cluster. And then boom, you hear this huge crash, and it landed all in the Pacific Ocean. And the next day on the news, they called it Russian space garbage. It
Yeah.
it was a trip. It just totally changed my idea of what's possible in the sky, what's possible with the news. Like just it started to make me realize that there's no way of knowing what being on mushrooms, each oval had the color spectrum. They were white ovals, and so you could see rainbows in each oval, and it
Mhm.
looked like they were rotating because of it, or maybe they were rotating. But to be on mushrooms and see this shit fall out of the sky, and I wasn't the only one that saw it, and there were people that were not on mushrooms who also saw it.
Uh-huh.
And when we got back to the house, the answering machine was going off because all the neighbors were calling, like, what the fuck was that? But do you have a theory on what the fuck fell out of the sky that night?
No, no, I don't. But anything. This isn't anything anomalous to me. Well, I mean, you've seen a bunch of my videos. I've got so much stuff of accounts falling from the sky, things being seen in the sky. Yeah. It only becomes mysterious to us because we're always trying to bridge what we see and experience with what we've been taught to believe that the sky actually is. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So these things become mysterious. But once you understand that sky phenomena is generated and that there are living entities in our skies that are traveling across our skies, they are seen as orbs. 'Cause I've done presentations where I show that orbs are seen in the inside the funnels of tornadoes. Orbs are seen on camera inside tsunamis as tsunamis are coming on shore. Orbs have been seen all in the skies during earthquake activity. When men are killing each other in the skies in World War II in aircraft, the orbs were called Foo Fighters. They were there. It's like they're observing us. Orb activity is what is seen by people who barely escaped from like flying or sailing straight into a dimensional envelope in the Bermuda Triangle. Well, there's been many eyewitnesses where people realized, damn, I almost got pulled into that. And but it's orbs that people see. Orbs, orbs, orbs are now absolutely 100% convinced now. I've seen the videos and I've shown them on my channel, and I now have a new one. Well, I haven't shown yet, but orbs are absolutely responsible for creating those elaborate crop circle patterns. Well, all the agroglyphs. Yeah, people have caught the orbs on camera making them now. So our world, I mean, that's been my mantra for a long time. Our world is not what you think. It's not. So it's just very hard divorcing from our education. We have been educated since we were little kids. I mean, we receive a lot of our education. A lot of the reasons we believe the world is the way it is because when we were raised, we watched cartoons. And cartoons are reinforcing everything about cartoons, going to space rockets going to the moon, and uh, you know, uh, Marvin the Martian setting up a base on the moon and Bugs Bunny always effing him over. I mean, these are comedy, but they reinforce all this stuff. So we're living under some type of plasma dome and its holographic field of luminaries. Those stars change position. I've been out in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico looking up at the sky at night on ARCHAIX meetups, and traveling. Yeah, you're never convinced. I, and way out there in the middle of nowhere using binoculars, we were tripping, watching stars change position and moving. And you know me, I do not do entheogens, mushrooms, peyote. I do not indulge. I'm already too effed up to even to eat. I'm already too far gone to to indulge in any of that behavior. I just don't. It's I just do my bourbon. But even back then, I wasn't even really hardly drinking at all. But yeah, man, the sky is full of amazing things. It always has been. And yeah, it wasn't Chinese junk or Russian space junk. No more than that balloon was Chinese that they said a couple years ago. Chinese weather balloon. No, man. It's things fall from the sky. Things are delivered from the sky. Even the orbs have even been linked to the cattle mutilizations. The horse and cattle that have been found with like laser incisions with organs removed and all that. Yeah. I, those orbs, they're very interesting to me because they seem to be range finders for intelligences that can't show themselves and are actually somewhere else. And those orbs act like range finders, and they can pop open, they can expand, and if you get stuck in that arithmetic, it can contract and take you somewhere else. So yeah, man.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it, man. I think there's places like Sedona that have vortexes, or that there's all kinds of openings into other places that are dangerous. The Toltec said death is not the worst thing that can happen. You be careful with getting too curious in opening doors that you're not ready to go into. Um,
Yeah, I agree. Death would be most welcome in many scenarios if you
yep,
just wanted to restart, try a
yep,
whole new life, get a new avatar, get a new identity, new life. 'Cause I believe that's what happens anyway.
yep.
But uh, I can think of something worse than that. I can think of some type of technology far beyond anything that's in the private sector being used, and uploading your consciousness into a hard drive. I could, yeah. I mean, there's nowhere to go. I mean, it's you're still you, but you're stuck in somebody's program. You're stuck in somebody's video game or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's freaky. I mean, that's a theory that the Toltecs entertain, is that, that we've been outmaneuvered by a force higher on the food chain, and that we arrived in this like dream, and that the background memories that we have aren't real, and that like we're just like caught in somebody's like creation of a reality, and that we want to become liberated from that somehow, so that we're not like, is a means to understand how this all operates. And so simulation theory versus Toltec dream conscious theory, that we are in a vision, that we're in a collective vision, and that we're co-creating and coexisting inside of that vision. It's similar to like an AI world that eventually will probably, or maybe has already been created, where people like put on the glasses and they go into the world and they stay there forever, potentially,
Hmm.
right? If they just get completely consumed, they forget that they put on the glasses, or they forget that, like that something happens where they just stay there. And so I think we're in potentially, that concept, whether it's, and when it comes to technology, I don't even think of technology as anything but magic, because whatever we are the creator is is a magician, and that all that was created from, even the transhuman agenda, all comes from an original source of energy. So even though it's technological in nature, the simulation concept, it doesn't take away from me the magic of it. It's just concerning as to who's running the show.
Yeah, it's transhumanism. That is something, but your statement here that technology is magic. This is like Peter Carroll in Liber Chaos. That's his conclusion,
Yeah.
and he gives some very. I mean, it's a hard read for most people. Peter Carroll is like super sophisticated in his delivery. You've got to really read his paragraph slowly. But it's a small book called Liber Chaos, the Book of Chaos. And his conclusion in there too is that yeah, all throughout history, there is no difference between magic and technology because technology is going to start off primitive, just like you would as an apprentice, as a magician and all that. But the more technologically advanced you become, all you're doing is masking magical terms and phrases under quantum camouflage. He says there comes a time when there is no distinction between the two.
Amazing. Thank you for telling me about that book. I'll read it. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Hollywood and the way they introduce the television, and then this, the globe spinning. The first thing was this ball that we live on,
Yeah,
and then it's just like you said, the cartoons, and then like to get us at such a young age, like homeschooling was looked at like as a, it was really made fun of or was put in a position where it was really difficult to continue. And so it wasn't too hard to completely kind of kidnap or not kidnap, but captivate and then the global or the worldwide audience just through these powerful screens, and now we're interacting with them on such an even deeper level that we have access to information all the time. But it's crazy to consider, and how many people are still staying in the indoctrination of it all. Like it's going to be it's not going to be a lot of us, I think, that come out of the hypnosis. I don't think it's designed for everybody to be having that experience. I think the masses kind of are captured, whether we like it or not.
yeah, I agree. I do agree. This is to you already know my position. I the more I research and the more I observe the world around me, and the more I have these interpersonal interactions with others, I, I'm I'm more convinced than ever. This predator versus prey ecosphere is not the real world. This is like a training program. This is something we agreed to. We're in here. And yes, it does cycle souls back in. Those who have accepted the programming, those who are not ready to make their exodus. I'm seeing more and more that the whole cyclical cataclysmic destructive deal has never really made sense to me. I see the activity of a benefactor, but I also see so much destructive stuff. But lately, man, my theory has been gaining uh, a whole new understanding. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell you straight out. I just had an interesting conversation with Madeline of Leaving Babylon yesterday. It's a live video on YouTube, and she had asked me a question, and I made an observation. It was the very first time that this ever popped in my head. But I had told her, I had given her an illustration from Paul Harvey, if I were the devil.
Mhm.
And as I was giving that illustration, I just realized, damn, I just I made a quantum leap in my understanding about these calendrics. The whole return of the chief cornerstone deal, why the eye of the pyramid has always been used as the evil symbol. And if I was a demiurge, if I was going to fool souls, then I would control both halves of the dichotomy, what's perceived as good and what's perceived as evil. Everything within the construct would be mine, and even those who actually thought, and and this now this is beginning to make sense, this whole Phoenix phenomenon deal. It's during the Phoenix episodes that the souls that are ready are making their exodus, but this is hidden. It's hidden because it's hidden under the guise of natural disasters. So what we're waiting for in the Judeo-Christian deal is the return of a messianic figure. I'm not, but they are, and it's attached to these calendars. And 2106 AD has always been the key year. It's the 6,000th year since the Adam and Eve reset, but it's also a key year for many other reasons. And it's not the return of Jesus at all. It's the return of something else, and it's not going to be a millennial reign that's going to be glorious and all that at all. For those that are still here, yeah, That little period there is 72 years before the next big Phoenix reset, which is 2178. You remember my research on 2178? It's the immortal looping number. It's the only number like it. It never collapses to zero. Every other number in existence either goes to 2178 or collapses to zero. So 2178 just happens to be on the 138-year timeline. How is that? That's not even a coincidence. It's a part of the structuring of our reality. So I haven't, my theory is now taking on a whole quantum leap in understanding. It's the return of the chief cornerstone is not a good thing at all, at all. And this entity is going to rule for 72 years before 2178. And I've always said this on my channel. 2178 is the year 3895 because time is not linear, it's cyclical. The Phoenix timeline shows that we're on a donut. And a donut is the actual structuring also of what? Toroidal field. So I'm always talking about how our calendars seem to be extensions of toroidal mechanics. And I've never been able to bridge all this, but now I have. Now I get it. Okay, so we've been hoodwinked. All these religions are thinking that this messianic figure is going to come back and they're going to realize, oh shit, this is the demiurge himself. This is the false god himself. And it's too late. And the ones that are actually rewarded are those that, just like the book of Revelation says, the book of Revelation literally tells us that the redeemed are those that are being removed from the field so they don't have to go through this shit. They're the ones taken out. They're even sequestered in a little altar in the fifth seal. And they're crying up to God, hey, when are you gonna do? Say, maybe you're in a safe area. God's telling you, you're in a safe area. Be patient. He says, I still have a few more to collect during the apocalypse. So the whole tribulation period is when all these souls are being harvested. They're escaping the construct. They're making their exodus, and they're leaving. But when the capstone comes down and the pyramid is finished, now it's like a lock mechanism construct. Remember, in all my presentations, I've shown the geometry, the measurements, the rectilinear measurements, everything about the Great Pyramid is to be understood as a three-dimensional lithic representation of the construct that we're in. When that cornerstone comes down, it is the lock that locks down the construct. Souls are no longer escaping. You've got 72 years to be ruled by this evil son of a bitch until total systemic reset 2178, which is the good thing. However, it starts you right back off at Adam and Eve reset. 2178 is the year 3895 BC. That's where they connect. It's a full donut. It only works in toroidal mechanics and only works with because we found all these things in the Great Pyramid. So I know when people are absolutely unfamiliar with my research, have not seen all this data, all these data sets. I show them on my channel. They're very meticulous. But for me to be shooting the shit with you in a video, talking about all these like this, I know I sound like an absolute madman. I get it. I totally get it.
Oh, it's great. I appreciate it. I know it does. I have friends that try to listen to you even when you slow it down and they just can't get it, right? And it's just not everyone's designed to be that, in that process, like a computer processing dates and processing information. And but I like to, present little snippets to them of your We Are Immortal stuff. That's the
Yeah,
kind of stuff they can really latch on to. It's not information heavy, it's more in the realm of like concepts that are more almost considered spiritual. And
right.
so that's what I appreciate about you is that you can go all over the place. You've read not just this kind of stuff, but you read things that are just as, powerful to me, but from a totally different point of reference. So, that's what I drew me to you was reading your book about being immortal. I forget the title.
Yeah,
Um,
Awaken the Immortal Within was
Amazing.
the first one, but my publisher in about 2 weeks is releasing. It's 5 times bigger. It's a lot bigger, but
Oh,
it's
cool.
and it's all new material. But
Sweet.
it's called empower the immortal within. Yeah, it's he likes it. He says it's better than the first book, so I'll take his word for it.
Well, that's huge, dude. You're a good writer. Do do you find yourself less and less tapped into what's going on in the world and more deeper, like do you pay more attention to history than you do current events, or do you find yourself decoding what's going on in the world as much as you used to, or what's your stance on kind of
I used to do it a lot, but the more you look at it, the more you realize it's a clown show.
yeah,
And the only real benefit to doing that is for those who are still asleep.
sure.
When I release those decode videos on the news, like wacky news, RKX wacky news reports,
Yeah.
when I do that stuff, it's entertaining to those who are already following RKX, uh, but other than that, it doesn't really have much value because everybody listening is already on board. What it does do though, those are good share videos for people who are still asleep. And I realize, damn, and they can see behind now they can see behind the scenes, understand what's really going on. But yeah, the entire world is a captured operation. There are no good guys. There's just no good guys at the upper levels. They do not exist. They're all puppets and they're all playing roles. They've all sold their souls. They've all signed the contract. Yeah, this to believe that there's even a dichotomy that there are that you have choices that are different now, man. It doesn't matter if you're going with the white hat narrative. It doesn't matter if you're going with the black hats. It doesn't or if you go with the tiny hats. It doesn't even matter because the only thing real here is you. It's
Yeah.
the only thing real here is you and all your interpersonal relationships. That's the only thing actually real here because we are such finite intelligences that we can only deal with things sequentially. We haven't hit that immortal status yet. That's experienced outside the construct. Here, everything must be dealt with sequentially and spatially. And all you're ever really responsible for is you and yours. What's going on around you, and because you can't be responsible for things going on in another country, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Gaza, all these things are distractions to keep you from any type of spiritual development. That's the only reason we're here, the development of the divine spark. It's the only reason we're here. All this other stuff is distraction. Now it's great, it's entertaining, and I love to get my hands dirty, and all that, but in reality, it's all a waste of time. It is. Every bit it's a waste of time. You can grow, mature, and become more of of and become more of the evolved in the co-creator relationship by just spending time with yourself or one or two or three other souls and just dialoguing than you could ever do in social media, exploring the news, exploring everything that's going on because it's all a clown show. It's all a clown show designed to distract. It is distracting billions of people. And they're just on a cycle. They you know what I call it, dungeon programming. They have succumbed to dungeon programming and they don't see nor they don't see the world nor interpret anything in the world the way you and I would. So it's sometimes you just got to let people cycle back. You got to let them take as many turns on the roller coaster as they need before they wake up themselves because you do more injury to souls forcing them to wake up or trying to force them to wake up than you do if they just naturally come to these conclusions themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of dungeon programming, I used to go on X Spaces a lot. I've told you about where you can just talk to people and you raise your
Uh,
hand, debate. And I used to hang out in a pretty cool room with a bunch of pretty awake dudes and women. And I went back like a year and a half later, and they all had become fucking religious. Like they all got the Bible got them, dude. Like they were super open. So sometimes I watched, I think as people move into their power and start to wake up, sometimes there's a retraction or something where they fear their own power and they end
yeah,
up buying into a narrative that, is like a Trump thing, like a Q thing. It's like it's this weird thing that, people want a savior, right? They want something that they can say is going to happen and that somehow gives them permission to then relax maybe or whatever. But it's between the Q thing and the Bible and just seeing some really intelligent people that I used to really have incredible conversations with. It's pretty concerning and disappointing and kind of
I
sad.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it, man.
But it's
But truth be told, you don't really know. I mean, Spaces is pretty much anonymous. You don't know who you're talking to.
that's true. That's true.
They could have started Spaces with a bunch of free thinking, every single one of them working for the for some branch of social media engineering, CIA or whatever, and they could have all started it. Got a whole lot of people listening and listening because
Yep.
they knew that they were going to start promoting the Christian Reich.
Yeah, yeah.
And then slowly, one by one, each one of those hosts and Spaces would have been becoming, oh, I became Christian. And this is, listen, man, I wouldn't put anything past these intelligence agencies at all.
So
At all.
oh, it's so funny to think about. But yeah, it's confronting to think that I sat there talking to agents, but it is what it is. I'm sure I have. And but
I
yeah,
still don't know how to do it. Have you ever run a space?
yeah, yeah.
I
I
still I still don't know how to do it, but it's on my agenda. I want to do it because I want to
yeah,
talk about a lot of the deep things we talk about in ARCHAIX,
yeah,
and I know Spaces is going to bring fresh blood in there. And I know that there's a lot of trigger people who think they're qualified to defend
yeah,
some of the people that I've professionally attacked. And
yeah.
I want to get in. I want to get into all that.
It's really
Man,
easy. You have to do it from your phone, but I
oh, you
can.
can't do it. You can't do it from a laptop.
Well, maybe you can now, but for a while it had to be the phone only.
Oh, it's
Um,
mobile. That's
yeah,
real discouraging.
but they've been tweaking it so more and more like you can listen now from your laptop, but it used to be all exclusive to the phone. The cool thing is about it is that when you own your own space, you can remove anybody at any time.
How can you see all that in those phone screen? You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, you only allow so many it only lets so many speakers come in. So
Hmm.
you have all these listeners that just scroll down through all these listeners, and you don't need to
Right.
worry about the listeners. It's only the people that can unmute themselves and, whatever they might say. So you get trolls, you get people that are in there to just get attention.
Yeah.
So you have to have a moderator, basically somebody, a co-host is what they call it, that's kicking people out as you go and refreshing the speakers. And you try to honor the hands as people come up. But some of the best debates I've ever listened to um, in there, especially when it comes to like flat earthers are really intelligent dudes because they've had to go deep into, trying to understand the globe model in order to be able to
I
straw
totally agree. I absolutely
that
agree.
argument. Yeah.
They're out of the box thinkers, man. They're the best.
Yeah. So some of the debates in there are next level. And unfortunately, like one of the best ambassadors of the level Earth awareness is Austin Whitsitt, and he went to Antarctica, and everyone thinks that he was part of the PSYOP, and that he faked a bunch of footage and that there wasn't a 24-hour sun, but he was there. He's a friend. He's a real deal. And the whole flat earth community turned on him, as well as the globe earthers hate him because he's so good at destroying the globe model. So sometimes some of the best people in the game get, unfortunately, a lot of negative information gets put out that isn't accurate, and then
Yeah.
people buy into it. So that was disappointing too. Just so many good so many good debaters out there, and I want them to all to not be censored, but that is what happens is we end up censoring ourselves based on rumors and lies. And so it's just there's constant arguing that goes on X, and it does take a certain kind of person to not like I did have to walk away after a while because there's some really really wicked people in there that say really terrible things to people that are spreading positive messages, and then you kind of have to like consider whether you want to fight or not, because it's just like it pulls your energy if you go to defend yourself, or
Yeah.
you can just let it be. And it's so, it's been,
Well, I just block. Yeah.
yeah,
F
yeah,
off. We're talking about the Phoenix phenomenon today. You don't want to talk about the F off. Yeah.
yeah,
Say anything stupid, you're blocked. Listen, this model has worked beautifully for me.
yeah, I love
Look,
it.
look, look what I got 180,000 subs
Yeah,
on YouTube, and that's not even impressive. What's impressive is that I can get 1,500 to 2,000 people in my live chat.
for sure,
So
man.
so this it's because people, man, they don't like that shit.
Yeah.
And they already know when you come to ARCHAIX, man, you're going to be policed. You get out of line.
Yeah.
Because I got a whole bunch of moderators that have adopted my practice because it keeps everything clean. It maintains a safe environment. Yeah, if you have something very important to say in any way, you can always say it respectfully. I mean, there's no way. I'm not dealing with that toxic shit at all.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
not doing it.
it's good. You have to have healthy boundaries like that. And I mean, the other thing I wanted to ask about is, how you came to the words reality tunnel. And I just can't tell you enough how important that concept is to me and to so many of the people I work with. And it's words I always reference your name when I talk about it, but it's such a powerful concept that we don't have to go with the collective and that
Right.
we can insulate ourselves and become independent of where everyone else is going. And I just would love it if you could kind of give a breakdown of how you discovered that concept and how you've applied it to your life and maybe going back to when you got out of prison. But yeah, whatever you want to share on that.
Well, yeah, the reality tunnel it's the reason why we can both be living in the same world, but we're not existing in the same universe. It's the reality tunnel is amazing because this construct, which is this is the whole existence of reality tunnels, the experience of reality tunnels completely does away with the Newtonian universe. And you realize, damn, I'm in some type of construct. Because a woman, a woman who is constantly doing feminine female things, and she's dressing as a female, she does her hair, does her makeup, she's living a feminine life. The construct literally throws at her all kinds of things that are within the feminine experience, things that guys never experience, things guys never do. So the constructual programming is designed to bring into contact with you all of the things that you already assume to be true. She assumes that she's female. She assumes that she's attractive. She assumes that all men just want to get in her panties. She assumes all makes all these different assumptions. So the construct builds this for her on a daily basis, and she comes to accept it. It becomes axiomatic to her. It's a self-evident truth that she is attractive, that she's female, and that all guys want to do is get in her pants. So she is constantly put into all these situations. Now, if she introduces some other patterning, such as uh, um, she may be attracted to a certain type. Well, once she has eliminated several guys because they don't fit that type, the construct all of a sudden starts bringing that type to her all the time, everywhere she goes. Strike up a conversation here. This has happened to all of us. It can happen from I could have used a male as an example, but it's the things there's two things operative here that the construct itself is using to bring things into your awareness. One of them is everything that you assume to be true. The things that you have assumed to be true is how your reality unfolds, but it's mixed with another template of programming, and that is how you see yourself. These two things right here are energies that you emanate that are reflected back as conditions in your life from the simulacrum. The simulacrum takes these signals. How you see yourself governs your behavior, your thought processes, what you do, your reactions with other people, all your interpersonal relationships. Everything you do on a daily basis is an absolute broadcast through the construct of how you see yourself. It's also everything you've ever assumed to be true, because that's in your informed field. Your informed field carries every single thing that you've come into contact with in your experience in this construct. This is how, like I said, I tell people all the time, I don't believe that the construct can read your mind,
Right.
but it sure as hell can read your hormone levels, and it can make extrapolations 10,000 times a second faster than you can, and totally base those projections based off everything you've ever done in the past. So it knows us real well, but it just can't read your mind, because the mind is actually the soul, and the soul belongs to something outside the construct. The only thing here The only thing it's really doing here is watching your avatar. And the avatar doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the construct. It's what your soul is wearing in order to pass through this experience. So the best way to build your own personal reality tunnel that doesn't conflict with the reality tunnels of other and the overfield itself of background phenomena of all the things that we know to be true, such as the sun's going to come up tomorrow, such as if you don't breathe, you'll suffocate, such as if you put your hand in a fire, you're going to feel pain. There are many self-evident truths in the construct that we all believe is true. But then there's a whole host of other phenomena that we don't know if they're true or not, and they belong to our reality tunnel. There are many things I accept to be true that the next man doesn't, and they're not true to him because the construct feeds him everything. This is why a liberal Democrat who is a closet socialist is going to live a life full of liberal programming, socialist programming. They're going to read all these books. They're going to get saturated in this field of this negative liberal, basically human hating construct. And the construct itself is going to feed them more liberals, more liberal publications, and it's going to actually trigger all kinds of hormonal responses in them as they watch the news and they get triggered when they hear conservative things that are offending them. Republican and conservative and even libertarian things that totally offend them. Our reality tunnel is the sum of everything. It's the experiences we have as a result of how we see ourselves and everything that we have ever assumed to be true. So if you want to experience anything just a little different than the norm, if you want some new experiences, the only way to jerk your way out of that is a pattern break. Because it's the only thing that's going to get the construct's attention. The construct's like a vast computer program that is designed to do one thing and one thing only. It knows that you don't belong here. Its sole purpose is for you to forget exactly that you're an immortal soul. Its sole purpose is to make you understand that this is a real world with real experiences, and it's going to feed you good and bad to make it as believable as possible.
Wow. That's amazing, man. Yeah, it's intense concept to consider that. It makes sense that Toltecs speak of similar things, that our blueprint determines everything. And so like the events of your past are going to create your future unless you go back and like and or well, they don't call it pattern break, but they call it
Yeah.
freeing yourself from your blueprint. And so there's ways to behave and interact that will free you up for more fresh interaction that's, and even I would, the way the Toltecs explain it is that there's an intelligence developing for those that break pattern. And so extra energy is lent to you if you're doing that, because then it creates opportunity. And so I don't know how the simulation theory would factor in there, but I sense that people like yourself and I and others that are not as routine heavy, where we switch things up and make adjustments to our patterns, we get insights and clarity because of it. And so it just seems like such a much more expansive way to experience this realm. Um, but yeah, thank you for that breakdown, man. I've noticed that people don't want to take responsibility for their lives. So they look to a doctor, they look to a priest, they look to even, a YouTube figure to tell them what to do. And
Right.
you're giving practical ways to actually where people can free themselves and not need somebody to tell them what to do or to follow a particular way of life. Because I think when people try to copy or be like you or copy and be like somebody else, then they lose their authenticity, and it has to come from within, some of these pieces to the puzzle, because that's where we're reclaiming our imagination and creativity. So I've loved that you talk about fiction, that you write fiction. To me, some of the greatest teachings come through fiction, like real knowledge pours in through the author when they're.
All of Jesus's parables were fiction. None of them were true.
Oh, love it. I was gonna ask. So you don't think that Jesus was a real dude?
yeah, that's a real, it's a complex question. And the reason it's complex is I do not believe at all that Jesus of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, born of a virgin, walking on water, turning water into wine, curing the blind, being crucified and whipped, having to carry his deal. I mean, Roman law would never allow.
Right.
Roman law would never allow for crucifixion was only for slaves and traitors. You know what I mean? Roman law would have never allowed a man to be crucified without his ability to appeal to Rome. Also, Roman governors weren't allowed to impose crucifixion without permission from the Senate in Rome in dealing with non-Roman citizens.
Mm.
So you have to understand the provincial Roman law was very technical because they had to govern populations that they weren't fully in control over because they weren't in the Roman Empire. These are Roman provinces. They're outside the scope of Roman authority. You know, you understand? The provinces were like a buffer zone against all other countries out there. So the Romans were always creating provinces. The provinces weren't like Roman territories that were already, you know, fully garrisoned, fully controlled in the interior of the Roman Empire. So especially at that time of Jesus. Palestine, yeah, they'd already had so many problems with Jews in that area of the world. Because remember, this is the area, this is also the time of Spartacus, the slave rebellion was just before this. Just before that was the two Mithridatic wars. Yeah, the Mithridatic wars showed the Romans, damn man, far away from Rome, we can get our ass kicked. So, until the Mithridatic wars, the Roman legions were thought to be impregnable. They had already won the Macedonian Wars, the two Macedonian Wars, and the two Punic Wars. Rome was taking everybody over. But when it comes to that little stretch of the world, man, they were on thin ice. So, Palestine. So, anyway, no, I do not believe in the Jesus of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
But I've always believed that shoot, there may be a crossover with Apollonius of Tyana, and the miracles of Apollonius of Tyana were talked about by the early Christian records, and there may have been some confusion here. I'm also aware that in the apocryphal books of Maccabees, there is a Hellenic Jesus
Mm.
is it in Greek, his name is Jason. In the Maccabean text, his name was translated as Jesus. And these are apocryphal texts. His he brought Hellenism among the Jews, and they hated him for it, which was the Greek culture. And the Pharisees hated him. Guess what the name of the main Pharisee who ended up killing this Jesus, this Jason Jesus guy in the Maccabean revolt. Guess what his name was of the Pharisees? His name was Judas.
Judas. Yeah, I was gonna say.
So we have over 150 years before Jesus, we have a story of a Jesus and a Judas who were opposed to each other at that time. Then we have Apollonius of Tyana. So I see that it's a soup made of all the best ingredients.
Yeah, makes sense.
And recently, I've had Ralph on my channel, Ralph Ellis, and he's been showing me that shoot, Jesus was king of Edessa.
Mm.
And I had Ralph on my channel a year earlier, and I kind of dismissed him. And I dismissed him because he's still promoting a Jesus, and nothing he's bringing to the table would ever bridge the Jesus of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because that's a miracle working Jesus. I mean, he surfed on water, he walked on water, he turned water into wine, he cured the blind, he raised the dead, Lazarus. Wait a minute, this guy was whipped and crucified, and then 3 days later, he resurrects from the dead, comes out, and then flies up into the sky in front of 500 witnesses. No, this is the story of Mithras. This is no, I'm not trying to hear this. So I kind of revolted and just shelved Ralph Ellis.
Right.
And then I'm going through his material, and we're talking about him on Twitter one time on messages. So I go deeper in one of his books. I'm like, man, I'm gonna invite him back to the channel, and I'm so glad he did. I'm so glad I did because now what I'm gathering from his research is yes, okay, Jesus was a historical figure, king of Edessa. Totally makes sense of the First Crusade now. Totally makes sense of the early Christian records not having anything, because remember, no Christian records came out for over 40 years. But Ralph Ellis bridged that and showed that the Jesus of the Bible is actually during the temple. during the AD 70 Roman war against the Jews. It didn't happen in AD 33. It happened in AD 70 to 73. This right here is compelling. I can get on board with this. Why? Because I'm a chronologist and I know that there are no Christian documents in that empty window of 40 years. They don't exist. But with Ralph Ellis's version, they did start appearing after AD 73. The fall of Jerusalem, all of a sudden the New Testament records start appearing. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John appeared in 140 AD. So, but they got this real sensational miracle working Jesus, and Ralph Ellis explained it. He showed what turning water into wine was a popular parlor trick. It's a special vase where you put your thumb on one of the spouts and it pours water. Take your thumb off and pour it. And it pours a different liquid from it in the same container, and it's wine. And it was something that was done in royal courts. It was like a gimmick. I'm like, wow, that makes sense. He says all these other things are rituals. Walking on water, raising from the dead. These are all the original Freemasonic rituals that were turned into a narrative. Resurrecting from the dead, being put in the tomb for 3 days, all of this, even the crucifixion, all rituals. I can get on board with that because from the beginning, I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a Jesus according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's a fantasy. So yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, Jesus was a historical person, but
Yeah.
the Jesus of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is a complete church lie. They turned Jesus into one of the X-Men.
Totally.
That don't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it seems like a captured operation, anyone that's buying into religious stuff. And the Bible's fascinating. I mean, I think I appreciate that you studied it so much and that you not dismiss it entirely.
It is,
Just,
it is fascinating. I'm totally on board that it is absolute spiritual food
yeah.
just to read the words of Jesus. Many Bibles come in what's called the red letter edition.
Yeah.
And when you open up the New Testament, everything Jesus speaks is in red letters. So this is technically the Word of God. Everything in black ink is all the stuff the church added. Church added all this, showing that the original sayings of Jesus was a literary masterpiece. Somebody else came and added all these miracles and added all these things. Because nowhere in the red letter edition are miracles done. This is just Jesus speaking. These are very spiritual teachings. They're parables. It's because absolute truths cannot be arrived at directly. So Jesus spoke indirectly. He literally used fictions to illustrate facts. That's what the parables are.
Yeah. I've heard Robert Siefer say that, that all religions were designed as programs, but that they hired the mystics to write them, and the mystics snuck the truth in, even though they were hired to capture the audience. So you can learn a lot from reading even texts that were designed to create a religion. There may be really meaningful information in there.
Yeah, so yeah, the red letter editions, the words of Christ, extremely profound, very. But you don't need a human sacrifice in order for you to process that information. You don't need a guy flying up into heaven before 500 witnesses. You don't need somebody feeding 5,000 people with 2 baskets of fish and bread in order to assess all the spiritual value. When you read the parables, you don't need, the parables had value before Jesus was even killed. Jesus
Yeah.
hadn't even been sacrificed. He hadn't even been sacrificed yet. He hadn't been crucified. He hasn't been resurrected. Everything Jesus spoke was before the supposed crucifixion, resurrection, flying up in the sky.
Yeah.
So it didn't take on value after those events happened. They already had value. So if it already had value, what do we need to sacrifice for? We don't. It was made up.
Love it, man. Wow, dude. Well, what are your thoughts on, you know, the if you can share since we got into the 138 and the Phoenix phenomenon, what have you shared with your audience that you could remind us about as far as what to expect this round, if any predictions can be made with 2040, 2046? Do you foresee certain places in the world to consider not being at that point? Or do you have a
Okay, Phoenix is 15 years from now is the third magnitude. There's only four magnitudes of Phoenix phenomenon visitations every 138 years. 2040 is third magnitude. And we've gone into all the Nostradamus material, the mothership material, and the Phoenix chronology itself, and we see um, I've done two two chapters in one of my published books on Phoenix and several videos. I've showed I've shown my community how the calendrix unfolds and how we do these amazing mathematical exercises using all these historical events. And in almost every one of them, it shows that the Phoenix is going to be terrible for Asia. On this third magnitude, it's going to be Asia that bears the brunt. It's always a it's always going to be a small region in the first magnitude. It's going to be like a quarter of the world in the second magnitude. It's a hemisphere in the third magnitude. In the fourth magnitude, which is going to be 2178, it is total absolute worldwide systemic reset. So this is third magnitude, which is like a total systemic reset for a hemisphere, not for the whole world. And so I see China comes up everywhere. China comes up everywhere in all the calendrics, and I've shown this over and over. Even in a recent video where I was showing that the Phoenix phenomenon even happens in other orders of arithmetic. Even when we take the time between historical events in orders of phi and pi, always associated to 138, like 138 years divided by phi, 1.618, or divided by pi, 3.1416. It's still, no matter how we look at it in different orders of arithmetic, it still shows China as bearing the brunt of the 2040 Phoenix event. And when I say China, I'm literally talking about Asia. I'm talking about the Oriental cultures in that area of the world. So uh, you can pretty much guarantee that by extension, because Phoenix always involves volcanism, earthquakes, and tsunamis. You can pretty much ascertain from this because Asia is going to get hit. So is the western coast of the United States, which would be ancillary destruction, probably earthquakes and tsunamis, not volcanoes. But the whole ring of fire, Pacific Rim, that's going to light up like a candle. We're going to have volcanic resurfacing, but Phoenix is real big on subsidence and upheaval. Areas get shoved up, other areas come down. So see, this is a huge uniformitarian misconception. People believe the uniformitarians science. It kind of promotes the idea that these mountaintops were underwater in some time in the prehistoric past. And that's why every mountain range has seashells at the top, but it's not true. Mountains are formed when they are pushed up. This is upheaval. They are shoved up from the seafloor all the way to the because dry land and ocean beds change places. And this is amazing because these are things that Mother Shipton, who was illiterate, put in her poem. She had an oral poem that was passed on for centuries before it was written down. She had a poem about the two sky dragons that were going to come in the last days. And her poem specifically says that mankind's new dynasty will be on ocean beds, and they will have to deal with the stench and stink of undersea creatures having died. But she said that after a couple of years, the soils are going to be super rich and badass, and mankind's going to live in an Edenic paradise. Everything's going to grow awesome. But it's so crazy that this woman would have known this 500 and like 60 years ago. Mother Shipton had written all this down about our future. She even said that the first sky dragon appears 1 century after a world war. Shoot, that's 2040. She nailed it. So, oh, yeah, it's really hard to tell. I don't want to tell people the wrong information. They're gonna, up and move somewhere. Jason said it's gonna be safe here. All I can say with absolute certainty is that through every cataclysm in history, the one area that was always safe just happens to be the area that's safe for demons as well. And we've never understood this. In the book of Tobit, Bel and the Dragon, in ancient Greek legends of Typhon, the gods and demons always flee to Egypt as the world is being destroyed. And what's over in Egypt? The Great Pyramids. You know what's really interesting about the Great Pyramids? They're the oldest architectural structures in the world, but they're still there.
Wow.
So all the cataclysms,
Point.
all the cataclysms, all the destructions, all the times humanity's been wiped out, those things have been there. They've been in Egypt. It's been the safest place.
Wow, that's huge. I never heard you say that before. I must have missed that, but that's amazing. Um, well, that dude, so powerful. Can you give us a little bit of for those that don't know and or a reminder for us that if you could get into a little bit of the first few seals and or the timeline of the seals breaking?
Well, we're in the second seal now. Heading toward next year is the middle of the second seal. The first seal, I mean, we've been lied to. The whole Judeo-Christian interpretation of the Book of Revelation is a lie. The book of Revelation was written it's written a very long period of time ago. Um, Hans Bellamy has gone through the Book of Revelation and determined that the mathematical information in there proves that it divides the year into 360 parts. And this would date the core material of the Book of Revelation before the 7th century BC. After the 7th century BC, we had added 5 days to the year. I forgot what it's called, the unlucky days. Um, so it's hard to really go into it, but the first seal is the riding of the first horseman. The first horseman is in white, and the color is very important. This is the color. It's basically the color of Hippocrates. It is the color of the Hippocratic Oath. It is the cover. It is the color of the pharmaceutical companies. White is the cover. It's the color of what the doctor wears, the pharmacist. So the white horseman is Apollo Pharmakia. It is Apollo, the deliverer of poisons. That's what Pharmakia originally meant. So we have the white horseman coming with a bow, but he has no arrows. The bow, the bow in Greek is toxon, which is very similar to toxin. The white horseman with a rider on it is almost like giving you the mental image of Chiron. Chiron is the hand. Chiron is the white centaur who taught the god Apollo medicines and poisons.
Mhm.
Apollo had a son. That son was Asclepius, the god of medicine. So we have all these ideas embodied within this white horseman that carries a bow. The bow, the bow delivers a arrow, which could also be something that pierces like a needle. It delivers the poison like a needle. These are the associations given with Apollo Pharmakia. And the first seal is basically about the poisoning of the human race. So this is what we have when you break down the original Greek of the first horseman, which is totally different than the Judeo-Christian interpretation, which has an antichrist, a messianic figure type appearing in the world with a bow. No saviors of mankind carry a bow. You understand? The bow is the symbol of the ancient archer guilds. These were the mighty hunters. These were all the anti-gods. These were all the ones that the gods. These are all the ones that were anti-religious. As a matter of fact, the most anti-Christian guilds throughout all Europe were the archer guilds. They were thoroughly pagan. So the bow has never been the hero, the divine hero's weapon. Messiahs and saviors and savior gods have always wielded a sword. So the sword is the savior, is the weapon of the saviors. And oftentimes the sword, like on the Toltec stone of the fifth sun. That was later attributed to the Aztecs, but it's not. It's Toltec. And the Toltec stone of the fifth sun, later called the Aztec calendar stone, it literally shows, and it was chipped off by Spaniards because they were offended about it, because it literally shows the God at the end of time, because the Toltec stone shows the earthquakes, tsunamis, fire from heaven, and great bird of heaven coming in the last days, and it shows all these calendar sigils that count down 2, an apocalypse. And at the end of the apocalypse, the savior of the world's in the center of the disc, and he's coming with a blade, and there's inscriptions on the blade. The blade is in the form of his tongue, and there's inscriptions on this tongue. The Spaniards chipped it off, but other people had already drawn it, and we have already found miniature versions that the Aztecs had to preserve what was originally there. The reason the Spaniards were offended was because it literally shows a god at the end of an apocalyptic period that is called, that's why it's called the Doomsday Steel. It's called the Doomsday Stone because those little sigils that look like this, they look like a what you see over the door of the Great Pyramid called the chevrons. They're also on the Toltec stone of the fifth sun. And Mesoamerican scholars say that this is the doomsday glyph of the ancient Toltecs, borrowed by the Aztecs. That doomsday glyph shows that all of this is for the last days. And in the last days, a god is going to appear to correct the calendar. That's what the whole calendar stone's about. So he comes to correct the calendar, and he has the power of speech to make war. And the type of war he fights is something that humans aren't used to. It's with words. And that's why his sword is a tongue with words. This is the exact same thing that's shown in the book of Revelation when supposedly the Messiah appears. Jesus is on a white horse. He's riding down, but he doesn't have a bow. He has a sword, but his sword is coming out of his mouth. And again, it's the power of speech to make war. So these concepts are identical, but the Judeo-Christian version has you thinking that the first seal, the white horseman, has something to do with a savior coming in. It's not. Saviors, these are false saviors. Apollo Pharmakia is the god of the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies pretend to save you from cancer when actually they cause it by the other companies that they own. And then when you have the cancer, you come to them and they pretend to save you, but they give you chemotherapy, which is a poison, and it kills a lot of people. But the first horseman embodies all these concepts, and it's all about Apollo, which is followed by the second horseman. And the second horseman, it's in the Judeo-Christian version, a red horseman comes to make war and brings a sword to take peace from the earth. But that's not what the Greek says. When you break it down to its Greek components, you find out it's not a red horseman. It is a fiery horseman. It's like yellow, red, and orange. It's not a color, it's fiery, like flames. So a fiery horseman comes, and in the translation, what is in English is sword is not sword. In Greek, it's makera. And makera is an assassin's weapon. It's a small dagger. It's a knife. So it's a fundamental meaning. And the second horseman is coming specifically not to destroy the world, not to end the world, but to take peace from the earth. So what we have here unfolding is after the first horseman rides and delivers a poison to the human race, after the pharmaceutical companies put something in the bloodstream of humanity, the second horseman comes with with the whole idea is to take peace from the earth using small arm weapons warfare. This is not conventional warfare with jets, tanks, aircraft carriers, missiles, and all that stuff. This is warfare at home in your neighborhoods. This is small arms using the deal. And this is what's unfolding now. This is what's going to happen when they take all SNAP benefits from all the lower income people at the same time that they turn off all the debit cards for all the millions of migrants that have been specifically put in all these Western nations and countries. When all that money is taken, when all those cards are turned off in order for them to get the lower income people to sign up for the digital IDs first. They'll start with the poor first, get them on board. Then they'll start working their way up through the middle class and then the last whatever, however they do it. But they're going to start by taking peace from the earth because when people start realizing, damn, all these people in this intersection right here couldn't even escape. They all got machine gunned by migrants. How the migrants even get machine guns? How they even get all this? So people are going to beg their governments for more security. They're going to beg their governments to do whatever they got to do to get rid of these migrants and get rid of these lower income violent people who can't take care of themselves and rely 100% on the government. And This is all scare tactics. This is the scenario unfold. It is literally a purge scenario. This is what's unfolding in the second seal, and it's already begun. It's already begun, and people have already been reporting to me all over the world for what's been going on in their neck of the woods. And yeah, knife fightings, knifings. I mean, this period even started a whole new genre of media reporting that's never been reported. That's mass knife attacks. It's never happened before. It's always been one person gets stabbed. Now mass knife attacks where a whole train of people, 20 people on the train, all get stuck. All in ICU. It's like somebody is deliberately going to from passenger to passenger, just stabbing everybody. It's never happened before, but it's happening everywhere now. So this is taking peace from the earth. It will be followed by the third horseman. The third horseman is Apollo Nemesius. The first one was Apollo Pharmakia. The second one is Apollo Helios, the fiery horse. It's Apollo Helios. You're going to bring flames, attacks against the infrastructure, everything urban areas. And war is not going to be somewhere far away. It's going to be in your neighborhood. So this is what they're gearing up for probably 2026 and 2027. Now, maybe even later this year. But the third horseman is after 2028. This is this is Apollo Nemesius. This is the most misunderstood because the Judeo-Christian version gets you to thinking that it's going to be a worldwide famine and it's going to be death. And it's the black horseman. That is not what's conveyed in the Greek. This is the balance. Somebody's going to bring peace. This is the scales of Nemesis. Nemesis is the ancient Greek goddess of vengeance and justice when somebody has been wronged. Yeah, the second horseman is what brought the wrong, followed the first horseman that also brought wrong. In the third horseman, people are going to see those who are going, well, whoever's going to be blamed for the 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 events of the first horseman, the pharmaceutical attack against the human race. It's in the third horseman that people are going to see the heads roll. People are going to see, oh wow, man, these people are actually getting punished. Now, in the second horseman, worldwide economy takes a hit, urban violence and warfare, migration. All these are created. So in the third horseman, we have a new financial system that comes in, but it does two things. From a worldly perspective, it's great. It's like the WEF told the truth. You will own nothing and you will love it. The new economy comes in. People are loving it because now all the violence is gone. There's bounty and there's plenty. It's like a Sodom and Gomorrah society. There's this pressure valve release. Everything's great, but it's a spiritual famine because all of those, if you don't really play your cards right, you'll get sucked into the new society. This new society is a soul killing society because it gives you everything that you want. And it might be doing that through some type of virtual reality deal. You might be able to sign up for a virtual reality deal like the metaverse might roll out with the newest, latest version, and it's in its cerebral interface holography that actually allows you to feel what you're doing in there. And it could be, I mean, senior citizens can feel like teenagers again.
Yeah.
That's how real it could be. So the third seal is a spiritual famine accompanied with an overabundance of things and all the things corrected from the first and second seal. This is the whole concept of nemesis because the scales they are the sign of they are the in the Greek because we're only sticking with the Greek here. In the Greek, the scales belong to Nemesis, and Nemesis was the one that brought things back to order and undid things that were unjust and literally put the hammer of judgment on those who were guilty while also bringing balance. It wasn't
Wow.
necessarily about right or wrong. Nemesis is about bringing balance back. This is what scales were for. So yeah, it's a totally different interpretation in the Greek. It is a spiritual famine. It is not a physical famine at all.
Wow, man, that's amazing. It makes sense. You've been right about so many things. This Christian Reich movement, this whole Charlie Kirk thing, it's really working. It's pretty freaky to watch it all play out. And
Clown show.
yeah, my
The
buddy,
clown show.
my buddy said in Arkansas they worship Trump now rather than Jesus. Like Trump is out positioned Jesus, which is pretty shocking. So
Yeah.
crazy world, man. So appreciate you, dude. Everything you talk about, it just expands my consciousness and helps me make more and more sense of what's going on. And you're a wealth of knowledge, and really appreciate you making the time today. And can't wait to hang out at the next ARCHAIX event. And yeah,
Oh, we're gonna do one in February, and it's gonna be a 2-day event.
sweet. Cool.
So, so the Maple Room, the same room we go to,
Yep.
in Houston.
Yep.
So we're gonna rent it for 2 days in a row.
Awesome.
And we're gonna have snacks and food and drinks. We're gonna do something different instead of you know,
Yeah.
presentations. We're just gonna hang out. We're gonna have people flying in from all over the world and just come out there and just hang out at tables and we're talk about things. And we'll do that for 2 days. Might get up for 20, 30 minutes, do a little speech. We're gonna do some raffles, give away a bunch of free stuff, have all the ARCHAIX merchandise out there. You're more than welcome to come.
Thanks, man. I'd love to be there. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, man. We can set you up.
Sweet. Thank you. I'd love to, man. And then yeah, for the viewers that are over here on my channel watching, thanks for being here. I am teaching a workshop in Sedona, December 7th and 8th, and it's a really powerful group of people that always come to my workshops. It's a really unique way of tapping into your body. We do these shamanic movements that are similar to Qigong or Tai Chi. We do them over a couple of days, and it's really kind of a mind altering experience because you're in this sort of unique state of attention. So there's still room for people if anyone wants to join us. Would love to see you. You can reach out through my website, joelschaefer.com. Always good to be with you, Jason. Appreciate you making the time for me, man. Can't wait to see you in February.
Awesome. Awesome. You're more than welcome to come. We can
Cool,
set
man.
you up.
I'll be there, dude. All right. Thanks, everyone. And we'll talk soon. Much love.